It's no longer early, all right? We got to win some fantasy football games. We got to step up. We got to push toward the playoffs. Big week ahead, so let's get ready for it in our fantasy football preview. The fantasy football season and NFL season reaches week number 9. Let's break it down. Before, just for those of you who have followed the content for a while, I would do the gambling real life NFL preview and the fantasy one all in one. I'm going to kind of split it up now so that just people can get whatever they want out of this instead of maybe having to sit through some of the stuff that they weren't necessarily here for. So we're going to start with the fantasy, and then we'll get to the game by game kind of picks breakdown afterward. That one might be a little bit more rapid fire, just covering a lot of it here in this one and just the way that the week played out. But let's get to it now. Enough of the rambling around. Let's get to some of these games. We will start with a really intriguing matchup as the Houston Texans, who are starting to look good, take on the Denver Broncos, who are also, I think, pretty good. Real life NFL, I'm very fascinated by this game. Fantasy, I am not. This feels like a stay away on a number of different levels. Both of these teams are very stingy against most positions. The Broncos are 30th in the NFL in points allowed to quarterbacks. The Texans are 32nd. So looking at either quarterback in this spot, it's a no for me, dog. CJ Stroud, Bo Nix, I'm not really trusting it. These are two high-level defenses. I just don't think I can roll out there with these defenses and feel good about that. Thank you. We got another follow there. DMPW Gaming, thank you so much for hitting that follow button over on Twitch. I really appreciate that. But yeah, back to this game. The quarterbacks, like in this spot, these defenses just too good. Just too good, too strong, too difficult to deal with. I have some worries about what this will do from a fantasy standpoint. So a lot of these today are going to be sits. Just letting you know on this Broncos Texans game. The running backs, same thing. The Nick Chubb thing ain't really working in Houston. Woody Marks, we all thought he was taking over. He wasn't. It's a stay away for the running backs on the Texans. And same thing on the Broncos side. RJ Harvey, we had someone in here yesterday asking about sell high on RJ Harvey. Now would be the time to do it because I think this is going to be a really tough game for him as well. Both these, the Texans 24th in points allowed to running backs, the Broncos 21st, and that is 21st and 24th most. So coming up on the bottom for least amount added, or given up anyway. At wide receiver, again, it's a tough spot. Cortland Sutton, he's owned in 96% of leagues. I was looking at it because we're going to do starts and sits of the week as well. And Sutton, I think he is still in a spot where he has been able to get his in PPR. I think you have to throw to someone. This isn't going to be a 0-0 game with no yards being gained. Some people are going to do some things. Sutton, I think, is one that you can trust and you can kind of roll with here. Nico Collins, a little bit banged up. Do we have news on him? Nico Collins medically cleared. That coming from a YouTube channel. Collins out of protocol. Kirk set to return. So a few weapons for Stroud to work with, but I'm not. Kirk, absolutely not. Collins, again, he is a number one receiver. I think he's one of the most talented receivers in the NFL. So if he's healthy, we're rolling with him. But there is not a secondary option in this game that I am trusting. And then the tight ends, actually my tight end sit of the week is in this one. It's Dalton Schultz. A little bit banged up on the injury report. This isn't the hottest take out there, I understand. But because he's a little bit banged up and because this is a difficult matchup for the Broncos, against the Broncos, Denver 24th for points allowed to tight ends. So really, really good. Texans are actually better at 28th, but it's a tough matchup. It's a tough matchup for both sides. I don't see a lot of fantasy value in this game. Up next, San Francisco taking on the New York Giants. I'm fascinated by this one because Jackson Dart, I don't know if there's a lot of fantasy goodness in there anyway, but it's a little intriguing because San Francisco, the numbers look good. They've allowed their bottom, I get 12th fewest for points allowed to quarterbacks this year. So, like, not elite, but a good defense. But we saw last week, there are some holes now. With all the injuries that they're having, they were able to piece it together for a week, but this week, or this last week, it did kind of fall apart. But now facing a rookie quarterback who doesn't have that lightning rod of a running back or the number one wide receiver, I still think that Robert Saleh and this defense is going to be able to game plan. So, again, this is one where I'm kind of avoiding a lot of the Giants on my roster here. But for San Francisco, again, it's an okay matchup. We just don't know who's playing at quarterback or anything like that. Looking at the Brock Purdy news, again, status still uncertain for Sunday. Niners noise on Fansided saying all signs suggest Brock Purdy won't return this week. And so again, for Purdy owners, I've seen him drop now in a lot of leagues. It's too bad because this is a good matchup for quarterbacks. It's like I view the Giants as a good defense, but a lot of that is because of the high-level pass rush that they can generate. When you get into the secondary, there's just not a lot there. So this is a defense that you can kind of exploit. But if it's Mac Jones, we're not starting Mac Jones. At running back, Christian McCaffrey is a go. Super hot take there. Tyron Tracy is, I think, an interesting play this week for the Giants. He should have a lot of volume in that backfield. And again, going up against a San Francisco defense that middle of the pack in points allowed against running backs this season, but is banged up, as we've talked about. So I think Tracy is actually a pretty good play for for owners here this week. At wide receiver, the 49ers receivers are kind of all over the place health-wise. If you own one and they are starting, play them. Injuries have been a concern for a number of their guys, but I am trusting my 49ers receivers this week. For the Giants, I just don't know if there's enough pass-catching options there that you're going to roll with it here against this 49ers defense. And at tight end, we're starting Kittle. Theo Johnson, we've brought him up a couple times in the most dropped category and in the waiver wire segment. I think he's going to have an okay day here against San Francisco, so he would be a pretty good desperation play. This next one, there's going to be some eating in this one. As the Colts take on the Pittsburgh Steelers, Pittsburgh has allowed the second most points to fantasy quarterbacks this year, so Daniel Jones, it's a play. We're going with Daniel Jones in this spot. I think it's a very good matchup. We've talked about Alec Pierce in waiver wire segments here throughout the week. I think Alec Pierce has a good week as well. The Steelers, the one thing they're pretty good at is shutting down the run. No one can shut down Jonathan Taylor. This offensive line is excellent. There have been times where you can literally drive a car through the holes on the offensive line, and they've set things up really well. So we're starting our Colts this week. Tight end, fantastic option with Warren. Pittman, Pierce, all of them. We're starting them at wide receiver, starting Daniel Jones at quarterback as well. On the Steelers side, Indianapolis has allowed the 12th most points to quarterbacks this year. I still think there are probably better options out there than Aaron Rodgers. I would absolutely start Daniel Jones over Aaron Rodgers this week. So it's probably a no-go for me. Any of the running backs in Pittsburgh, it's a no. This is a Colts defense that's really good against the run. That they have given up some points to wide receivers this year. I think DK Metcalf is in for a good game, but the rest of them, I'm not trusting a Calvin Austin unless it's a deep league or anything like that. And then the tight end situation is a little all over the place with Smith and Freiermuth each getting some opportunities. But I think there is going to be some fantasy goodness in this game. I would just kind of hesitate on the Steelers side there. Yeet 56, what's up, man? I'm cooked. Got to start to Jones, Stevenson, Dowdle, or Hubbard. Okay, interesting one here. You know what? We're going to go right into the Vikings game that I was going to talk about. So let's break down this Aaron Jones situation here. Jones is back after missing some time with an injury. An okay start to everything. They're going up against the Detroit Lions. Detroit is one of the stingiest defenses against the run this season. So I would have a bit of trepidation of starting Jones in this spot. You have Rico Dowdle, who was a lightning bolt for a little bit, but I don't think those days are going to be happening with Chuba Hubbard back. I think Hubbard is going to get the majority of the work in that backfield again. And you have New England taking on an Atlanta defense that is just kind of all over the place. So, Yeet, I can see where we're worried about being cooked here a little bit. If it were me, I would go Hubbard, absolutely, as one of my running backs, and then man, it's a tough matchup against Detroit, but Jones still presents some pretty good value in the pass catching game as well. With McCarthy coming back, there could be some checkdowns there. With Aiden Hutchinson not weighed down by a new contract, I think there could be some kind of bailout passes to Aaron Jones. So I think it is still Jones and Hubbard for me. I can't get the fumbling issues from Stevenson out of my head. Even though it's an okay matchup against Atlanta, I still worry about a backbreaking turnover or something along those lines. So I would go Jones and I would go Hubbard in that situation. Looking at the rest of the Minnesota-Detroit matchup, Detroit has actually been okay to play your quarterbacks against, but we're not starting JJ McCarthy this week. We're going to let that kind of play out. Minnesota, I still believe in this defense. I think the defense is better than some of the numbers they have put up this season. So Goff is probably a no-go for me this week. I would try to find a better option out there than Jared Goff. Both of these teams, as we talked about, good against running backs. We're not sitting Gibbs at this point. And again, I think Aaron Jones, especially in PPR formats, can provide a little bit more value in the pass catching game as well, given the really good pass rush of the Detroit Lions, who have been a bit of a problem in giving up points to wide receivers this season. I think that secondary has been a little bit banged up and maybe just not as good as people were anticipating. So I think Minnesota has look, start Justin Jefferson. But I think Addison has an opportunity to come up with a good week as well. So I'm liking some of the kind of secondary passing options for the Vikings. Minnesota's secondary is good. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a must start every week. And all the talk about we got to get Jameson Williams going, I know that I have hard eyes emojis for him anyway, but I think Jameson Williams probably gets right in this spot. Hawkinson, we're trying to find a different tight end at this point against Detroit. And obviously we are starting Sam Laporta. Back in the Twitch chat, Stevenson didn't practice all week. I heard he might have turf toe. I kept him because the rest of the season schedule is too good to resist. Admittedly, I missed that. Sorry. I didn't know that he had missed this week. Travion Henderson, it's not a bad ad. If you have an open spot or something like that, I still think, it is weird that the electric plays that we saw in the preseason and in college just aren't there at all at the NFL level. But if he gets maybe a little bit more of a run to kind of build into it, maybe some of those pop up. So an interesting ad anyway. But I still think Aaron Jones and Chuba Hubbard, the way to go for you there, Yeet, in the chat. Let's go now. Carolina taking on the Green Bay Packers. Oh, sorry, one more here in the chat on Goff. Detroit was just a lot of mouths to feed. I have had JMO, and it's hard to say it's him or even Goff. Yeah, they have a talented football team. And Williams, the tantalizing thing is that he has that big play potential, but he's not just Deshaun Jackson where it's just run deep and go. There's a lot of he doesn't have the most diverse route tree in the game, but it's not just a stick either. You can give him an underneath thing and he can kind of house it. He has that kind of ability, and it's so tantalizing, and it's tough to just sit that, right? Because you could have the game where there's 27 points sitting on your bench. So he is a really, really tricky one to have in fantasy football. I'm take committed at this point. I see the talent there. He is such a good player, and I can't overlook that. So even though there is a bit of a meh out there, I still love the kid and want him on my fantasy teams as much as possible. I have Love over Bo starting this week based on Carolina to Houston secondary. Yeah, I would that one 100%. Nemo Peak, where we're going to get into the Green Bay game here. Packers taking on the Carolina Panthers. Look, Panthers have been better this year. They've come up with a couple of pretty good wins. It's not an awesome team on the road, though, and I really do think that Green Bay getting big performances from Jordan Love is really something you can expect going forward. I think last week was kind of the get right week for this group, and I think there's another level for them to get to. I think Christian Watson being back helps that out a lot. So yeah, I'm going Love over Bo Nix in that spot 100%, Nemo. I love that play for you here this week. We'll see what's going on for Carolina quarterback wise. I don't think Bryce Young's supposed to be playing this week. Is that what boy, the Blue Jays get to the World Series, and I miss a lot on everything. Oh, Bryce Young expected to play this week. That from 2 hours ago from Fantasy Pros. So that's good. Still don't play him, but it's good that he's going to be playing at least. But don't start Bryce Young this week. Do not. But that does help at least some of the receiving options for Carolina, because it was bad with Andy Dalton a week ago. But Teteroa McMillan is a guy that we can roll with this week. He is just such a talented football player. Running backs, the Packers are pretty good against the run, but Chuba Hubbard, I think at this point when he's healthy, he's matchup proof. It does take the value away from Rico Dowdle, as we discussed with Yeet 56 earlier. But there is still an opportunity, I think, for Chuba to come out and put up some points here against Green Bay's defense. We're starting our Green Bay wide receivers. Christian Watson I like a lot, just as a football player, and I think there's a good opportunity here. Even though Carolina's secondary is top 3 in the league in fewest points allowed to wide receivers, it's still a good matchup, I think, for Green Bay. I like the talented players they have, and I think they can kind of dine out there a little bit. So I like that spot. It's a great spot for Tucker Kraft this week against a Carolina team that is top 10 in most points allowed to tight ends. And we gave this out earlier in the week as a bit of a desperation play. If you've missed everything at tight end, Jatavion Sanders, 1% owned. He had a week where he had 7 targets. It's come down since then, but he is getting a good matchup against Green Bay. Their linebackers are much more focused on getting after the quarterback and stopping the run than they are covering tight ends. So there's a hole there for Carolina to exploit. So Jatavion Sanders, if you want just the cheapest of cheap plays at tight end in daily fantasy, or a desperation heave in your regular fantasy, I think that is probably the way that you could go. We're going to get to the other games here in a sec, but want to remind you guys that if you're digging the fantasy football analysis or the Blue Jays talk we had before, or the wrestling that's still to come, you can bring it with you wherever you go on Couch Potato Diary, the podcast. You can find that on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your pods. And while you're there, hit that subscribe or follow button, depending on the platform. Leave a rating or a review. All that stuff really does help, again, as we're trying to grow this thing called Couch Potato Diary. Back to the football. It is the Chargers taking on the Titans. Titans have actually, they're a top 12 team in terms of fewest points allowed to quarterbacks in fantasy football this season. I think that is because teams blow them out and then can just run all over them, because the Titans have given up the second most points to running backs this season. That being said, we're starting Justin Herbert this week. The guy's going to World Series games with a stunning girlfriend with him. Confidence is high, right? Watch those Moneyball scenes. That stuff matters. But he's too good to not start against the Tennessee Titans, okay? So we're rolling with that. I have the slightest concern about Simmons going up against an offensive line that has been ineffective this year for the Chargers, but Herbert is still going to get his. This offense is still going to get theirs, and they're going to be great. We're not touching Cam Ward in fantasy this season. In terms of the running backs, again, like Vidal, it's a cake matchup against the Titans, so we're rolling with that one today. I even think Haskins hasn't been as big of a part of the game plan as some people wanted him to be. I think Haskins could get some in this as well, maybe a little bit of garbage time for you, but I still think he's going to have an opportunity here. So deeper leagues, desperation situations, I think he could come up with a decent game as well. On the Tennessee side, Pollard is probably a no at this point, but Tyjae Spears just gets more and more of this offense every single week. I think he's okay. I don't think he is the greatest player ever, but there's opportunity there, and he's good enough that I think he can take advantage of that. We're starting our Chargers pass catchers this week. Tennessee, again, the secondary does not provide a whole lot of resistance there, and I would try to find someone other than the Tennessee receivers to start. Ridley, Aoman, or those guys. This is a difficult matchup against the Chargers, and as far as the tight ends go, both these teams do pretty well against them, so I would try to avoid that situation if at all possible. Up next, it is Atlanta taking on the New England Patriots. Both these teams in the top 10 for toughest to get fantasy points against in the National Football League. Falcons are a top 5 defense against the pass in fantasy, while the Patriots right on the cusp of the top 10. And so because of that, my sit of the week at quarterback is Drake May. The kid's been awesome. He has been unbelievable. And I still think probably leads the Patriots to a victory in this game, but I don't know if the big production is going to be there, even though it is a Falcons team that struggled against Miami a week ago. We've seen this team just have some lapses and then come back and look very good. I trust the good more than I trust the bad right now for Atlanta, so I would try to find someone else other than a Drake May to go with this week. Again, with Nemo Peak in the Twitch chat, going with Jordan Love, I would go Love over Drake May this week. if that helps you all out at all. And we're probably not going with the Atlanta quarterback situation. Definitely not Kirk Cousins. Not great there. But in terms of Michael Penix, he was officially limited on Wednesday. Falcons optimistic Penix will return against the Pats. So even, but then, and that was a day ago, an hour ago, Michael Penix Jr. injury threatens Falcons playoff hopes. So it's all over the place. Keep it locked on, on the news and everything like that. Regardless, we're not starting Penix against an ever-improving Patriots defense. For the Patriots, at running back, again, we had the note there from Yeet that Stevenson may not be 100% or good to go for this one. If that's the case, Travion Henderson, this is a Falcons team you can run on a little bit. Henderson would be an interesting add for some of those deeper leagues, or if you've lost someone to a bye week, that could be potentially someone that you can roll with as well, but that's a bit more of a deeper league situation. Patriots are really good against the run. There's not a scenario on God's green earth where a healthy Bijan Robinson should be on your bench ever. So don't do that. Yes, in-depth fantasy analysis. Bijan, start him. Both these teams pretty good against wide receivers as well. Diggs would be a no for me this week for the Patriots. On the Atlanta side, Drake London, the volume is just too much to ignore. I think you have to roll with him in this spot. And then at tight end, the Falcons are really, really good. They're the best at limiting tight ends this season, giving the 32nd most points to tight ends. So, not that we're rolling with any New England tight end anyway. But our tight end start of the week is Kyle Pitts. He is going up against this Patriots defense that has given up the 5th most points, to tight ends this season. I think Pitts has a pretty good day against this New England team. Again, their linebacker is a bit more focused on getting after the quarterback. Spillane isn't really a coverage guy and would be a really bad matchup for Kyle Pitts. So I think there's a really good opportunity here for Pitts to have a pretty good day. Cincinnati taking on Chicago. This is the, hey, remember when we were good bowl? The Bears maybe have to go a little bit further back than the Bengals. Again, Joe Flacco injury situation going on. Well, we're not starting Joe Flacco in any sense anyway. And this Bengals one, we've talked about the Bengals injuries a lot this year. All right, so Flacco says he feels good, but his status is to be determined. So we will see how all of that goes this week. But we're not starting Flacco, and the Bengals situation's interesting because we're not sitting Chase Brown, even if Flacco is not playing. We're not sitting Jamar Chase. We're not sitting T. Higgins. We're not sitting any of these guys because they're too talented, regardless of the quarterback. And that has led to some tough situations, but we're not sitting any of these guys this week. We're not starting any Bengals quarterback, whether it be Flacco or Browning, but our start of the week at quarterback is from this game, and that's Caleb Williams. The Bengals have allowed the 7th most points to quarterbacks this season, so there is a huge opportunity for Caleb Williams. He has not looked particularly great in any of these games, but he can put up some numbers. I continue to be a bit more of a believer in Caleb than a lot of the media have been. I think that there is a real opportunity for him to kind of shine in this game, and I don't think he's been as bad as everyone has been making it out to be so far this season for him. Nemo Peak. Have to start Chase with Browning, trouble in paradise. Yes, no, that's fair. Yeah. Oh no, you have to start the, at worst, second best receiver in football. Oh, whatever will we do? So yeah, devastating news, obviously there. But now at running back, the Bengals have given up the most points to running backs this season, so DeAndre Swift has a chance to dine out in this one, and the Bears defense hasn't really been good against running backs either. They're 10th in most points allowed, so Chase Brown is someone that we are certainly rolling with as we just keep giving out Canadians to play in this matchup. The Bengals, for whatever reason, they are actually pretty good against wide receivers this year in fantasy. I think there's more noise than truth in that number, so we're starting our Bears patch catchers this week. I think even Luther Burton III has an opportunity to do something pretty good here, but Roma Dunze certainly is someone that I think can kind of ball out here in this particular matchup. And again, we're starting Chase, we're starting Higgins in fantasy, and we're starting the tight ends here as well. Colston Loveland hasn't really been as big of a part of the offense as people would have wanted him to be, getting drafted as high as he was. There's a lot of mouths to feed there, but I think it's an okay start against a bad Bengals defense. I just think this is going to be a really high-scoring football game, and one where Loveland could have an opportunity. The Bengals Again, they have kind of that split at tight end, but if we're desperate, Noah Fant isn't the worst option out there. We now go to the 2 o'clock games, and we start with the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Vegas Raiders. Jacksonville hasn't really been good against quarterbacks this year. They've given up the 5th most points to the quarterback position, but we're not starting Geno Smith. They turn the ball over way too much, and it's a defense, honestly, a streaming defense that we gave out as a waiver wire pickup this week because the pressure they can get on the quarterback. Geno Smith hasn't handled it well this year the way he did a year ago with Seattle. And I just have a concern there that a few of those big plays could happen from Geno throwing the interception to Jacksonville. So we're not starting Geno Smith in this spot. Raiders, they don't feel like a team that has been middle of the pack against quarterbacks this year. So I feel like Trevor Lawrence hasn't. I mean, look, he's played well against the AFC West this year with that game on Monday Night Football against the Kansas City Chiefs. They have come back down to earth since then. I thought that was going to be like a real fork in the road moment for them, but they've kind of just turned back into what they were. But Trevor Lawrence gets his this week in a pretty good matchup. We're not sitting Ashton Genty. Jacksonville pretty good against the run, but we're just not sitting him there. ETN. Again, the Raiders have been better against running backs, middle of the pack, but ETN is someone that I think you can trust. Our start of the week at wide receiver is Brian Thomas Jr. in this game. Maybe not going out on a limb, but Travis Hunter is on the IR now. He gets a knee injury in practice, so he's going to be out for the next 4 weeks. Brian Thomas Jr., I think, is one that benefits more from being the guy and getting a lot of that volume. This is a great matchup. Raiders have given up the 3rd most points to wide receivers this season. I think Brian Thomas Jr. has a monster day for Jacksonville. And on the Raiders side, Jacoby Myers could be an okay play this week. Jacksonville's given up the 8th amount of points or the 8th most points, to wide receivers this season. I think you can go with him in that spot and have an okay day. The tight ends, the Raiders have traditionally not been great against them, but 26th for points allowed. So that means they've been really good this year against that spot. They're just focusing on that and not covering wide receivers ever. But I guess Ingram, who is the Jacksonville tight end? Oh, it's Strange. No, we're not going with that. And Raiders at tight end, like Brock Bowers. It has been frustrating all year, but he is someone that you can go with there for sure. Rams, Saints. We don't have to spend a whole lot of time on this one. I don't know if I'm trusting any Saints player, especially if Kamara is not healthy. I guess Olave. And that's it. The Rams are too good of a defense. The Saints are too bad. Juwan Johnson, again, it's a bit of a tough matchup, but we've given him out as a waiver wire play this week. He could still get some good volume in this. And then we're starting our Rams. I get the Saints defense has been middle of the pack to actually good against fantasy this year, but I still like Matthew Stafford in this spot. I think Kyron Williams has a good day. Any pass catcher that's healthy for the Rams, we are rolling with, and that includes the tight end spot. We get to the marquee game of the week. It is Kansas City taking on the Bills of Buffalo. This is a major matchup. Both teams have been great against quarterbacks, so obviously, just sit Mahomes and Allen, right? No, we're starting our guys in this game. Kansas City's run defense, they're 27th against fantasy running backs this year, so a top 5 defense in limiting running backs. We're not sitting James Cook. He has been a beast all season long. Carolina was good against the run, and he just absolutely gashed them a week ago. So we're starting James Cook. I think genuinely one of the most talented running backs in the NFL. On the Kansas City side, it is a bit of a timeshare out there. Check the health of Pacheco this week as it kind of goes along, but if he's healthy, we're playing him. Same thing, if Hunt is healthy, we're playing him, and if Smith, I think could be a bit of a bigger dart throw, deep league sort of an ad there. At receiver, it's kind of Rashee Rice, and I don't know if anyone else. Xavier Worthy, if we're desperate on the Kansas City side. Keon Coleman, I have said this was going to be a breakout year for him. It just hasn't been to the way that I would want it to be. And it's tough to break out against this Kansas City secondary. So honestly, I think Rashee Rice is kind of the only one that I'm feeling 100% confident in for starting a wide receiver. And then we're starting the tight ends in this game. Buffalo had quite a bit of success last week going in 3 tight end sets, so there could be a lot of that, and the next evolution out of just running the ball down Carolina's throat is passing a couple of times out of that and getting it into the hands of Dalton Kincaid. So I think there could be even more opportunities for him, and I feel pretty good about having him as one of my breakout players coming into the season. And then obviously you're not sitting Travis Kelce at this point. We go now to the primetime games, which is a reminder that you can follow me on social media. I am at Primetime Klein on Instagram, X, TikTok, Threads, and blue sky. Seattle Seahawks taking on the Washington Commanders. This Seattle defense I have a ton of respect for. They are 13th in points allowed to quarterbacks. I think they're better than that. But we got word today Jaden Daniels will start on Sunday Night Football. You haven't been waiting on Jaden Daniels to come back to not start him. So I like him in this spot. We're going to go with that. Sam Darnold, I think you can get. I think you can roll with. Washington, 6th in points allowed to quarterbacks this year, which means they've given up the 6th most, which means time to dine with Sam Darnold. I think it's going to be a good spot. For the running backs, bit of a different question. Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt is my sit of the week at running back. This Seahawks defense is relentless against the run. They 23rd most points allowed to running backs. So is that 10th fewest? So yeah, really good defense that I think is going to shut the door here. Washington, middle of the pack. I think you can kind of trust Kenneth Walker. I was able to pick him up in the Vampire League this week, so we are rolling with him in that situation. At wide receiver, it is a mash unit for the Commanders, and we're probably not going to know until later on in the day. So keep an eye on the practice reports as the week goes on, but I would err on the side of caution. I don't know if there's anyone, especially in this matchup against Seattle, I don't know if there's anyone in the receiving room for Washington that is worth missing out on. If they end up being a no-go for this football game. Now, there are some options that you can probably pick up. More specifically in the Arizona-Dallas game, I think like Wilson you can pick up in that one. If you're desperate, like a Turpin or a Tolbert could be as well on Monday night. But I don't think there's anyone in the Commanders that is worth it for that type of a swing. Well, like Seattle, JSN has turned into a superstar, and Cooper Kupp has been pretty valuable out there. And AJ Barner at tight end, I don't mind in a good matchup here against Washington, and Zach Ertz. It's a pretty good matchup against Seattle. They don't really defend the tight end all that well. I missed this one for the Kansas City game. Thoughts on Broussard Smith? I think that there is a role for him there. Pacheco has not bounced back in the next year removed from injury in the way that I thought he would. And Kareem Hunt has his big moments, but I do think those are getting a little bit more fleeting. So I think there's an opportunity for Smith to have a few more big moments here in the Kansas City running attack. And so I don't think he's a plug and play option this week unless we're really desperate, but I think there is an opportunity for more fantasy gold as it goes along. So that's a bit more kind of like some of the other ones we talked about on the waiver wire segment. Nemo, I don't believe you're around for those, but you can check them out on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@CouchPotatoDiary. We had a couple in the waiver wire segment of plays with Tank Bigsby and Emmanuel Wilson, looking at some kind of like luxury plays. I think Smith would be that as well. If you have a good roster and you're just looking for a bit of a home run swing and you can afford to have a vacant spot on your bench, basically, I think he would be a guy that you would absolutely throw into that landing spot 100%. We have a couple people in the kick chat that are going a little bit much on some of the things that we don't love in there, but still, either way, Sackmwing657 and Kick Community, thank you for popping in, even if it is to try to sell me on a couple of things. We go to Monday Night Football. It is Arizona taking on the Dallas Cowboys. This is one where fantasy will be a wonderful thing in this, because the Cowboys have one of the worst defenses in the NFL, but they also have one of the best offenses in the NFL. So anything that the Cardinals defense could be good at, I don't care. Dallas is going to put up numbers against them. And anything that Arizona could be bad at, I don't care, because Dallas's defense is going to be bad against it. So if they have an ARI or a DAL beside their name on your roster, unless it's a defense, we're going with it. Dak Prescott, 100%. We are absolutely rolling with Dak Prescott this week. Kyler Murray, you gotta, have to roll with Kyler in this spot as well. Looking at the injury news for the Cardinals here, trying to find the Trey Benson injury update. Trying to find it here very, very quickly. All right, doesn't look like there's been a whole lot updated on him, and it's Monday, so that'd be a bit of a home run swing, I suppose, with that particular play. But I do think that you can get something here with a Bam Knight. He was someone who we were talking about as a fantasy ad this week because of this good matchup, and he is the start of the week at running back. Even if Benson's okay to come back, I don't know if it's going to be in a full capacity, and I do know that Bam Knight will be. So I think Knight really takes the cake and has a really good game here. We're starting Marvin Harrison Jr. It's a big matchup this week against Dallas, and I even think like we gave out Michael Wilson as a waiver wire rebound this week. He is someone that you can trust, and we're starting our Cowboys receivers always in this season and in this matchup, and then we're starting our tight ends in this game as well. So those are the fantasy breakdowns for every game in the NFL. Any last minute questions, throw them in the chat, or if you're watching after the fact, let me know on YouTube if you in the comments. If you are listening to this on podcast, just search Couch Potato Diary. Get at me on social media. I am at Primetime Klein. Again, Instagram, X, TikTok, Threads, and Blue Sky.